Hey, how's it going with that person you're seeing?
Yeah, it's going really well. They're awesome. It's just,
Yeah?
no, it's stupid. Never mind.
Nothing is stupid. What's up?
Okay, well, they like disappear for 6 hours at a time. Over text, I mean. And I don't know what to do.
What do you mean?
Well, I keep assuming all the worst case things, like what if they just aren't that into me and that's why they're disappearing? And that brings up all this fear in me. You know, I really want to be on the same page as them with texting, but I think even more than that, I just want some clarity, you know?
It seems like you know exactly what to do then.
Wait, you mean, no, there's no way. What if they think I'm just too needy or I push them away?
I mean, the other option is to stay in this limbo of assumptions, anxiousness, and uncertainty. I know which one I'd choose.
But there's no way that could work. Could it?
So, a few years ago, I was dating this girl, and she was beautiful and funny and silly, right? So I really, really liked her. But the problem was that over text, she would just disappear for like 6 to 8 hours of the day. And this really brought up a lot of fear for me, but also it made me argue with myself. So, for example, one of the doubts that came to me was, well, maybe she's disappearing because she's not that into you. I would be stuck in this limbo of assumptions and trying to argue those assumptions, and it just left me feeling confused and bad and stuck. And at that point in my life, as I said, I'd already done a lot of work on myself. But with this situation specifically, my biggest problem was I just didn't know. I didn't know what she was thinking or feeling, or you know, where her head was at in terms of us. And that's why I was stuck in this cycle. And no amount of trying to be secure or trying to argue these thoughts were helping me, because I didn't have an answer. And I sat with that for a while, and this thought came up to me pretty naturally, which was like, well, if you're stuck in this pit of despair and worry and assumption because you don't have an answer, then why don't you just get an answer? Why don't you just ask her? And then obviously I get hit with all of these doubts and fears of like, are you crazy? You can't ask her that. What if she thinks you're needy? But at this point, I knew, based on past experience, that I would just get stuck in that same limbo and loop unless I did something differently. So I said, okay, I'm going to do what I can feel inside of me is the healthier thing to do. And I'm going to ask her. So the next time she came around, we're sitting on top of my apartment building, condo, and I kind of take a few deep breaths and I'm like arguing that fear in my mind, and I turn to her and I say, hey, I've noticed that we aren't texting that much. And for me, because we're only seeing each other once or twice a week, texting is an opportunity for more connection. So I just want to know, you know, are you just too busy? Do you just not text that much? Do you just have a different style of texting? What's happening? What's going on? And I take like a deep breath and I'm like waiting for this response. And she turns to me and she looks like kind of confused. And she's like, I thought you didn't want to text. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And she pulls out her phone and she scrolls to 4 different places to where I'd responded to her in the texts. And in each point, my response is like a 1-word answer, sometimes with a full stop after it. Like, okay, or that's cool, or, you know, nice, or something like that. And she's pointing at these and she's saying, yeah, your replies make it seem like you just aren't interested or don't want to chat. So I just kind of got busy with my own thing. And it all started to make sense to me. And then I was telling her, I was like, no, I really want to talk to you. And like, I can see what I was doing there, and I'm so sorry. I'm going to switch it up. You know, let's text more. And she was like, yeah, I'd love that. And, you know, now that we're talking about this, can we actually like be more cute in the messages? Like, you know, your responses were really dry. Could we like do some emojis or like cute things or blah, blah. And I was like, fuck yes, let's do it. That's awesome, you know? And I was so glad that we had that conversation. And I felt so relieved. And I got that clarity that I wanted. And even better than that, the anxiety that I was having, the worry, the fear kind of melted away. What I really realized in that moment is, number one, I am never just going to sit and assume again. I am going to ask. I am going to gain clarity. I think one of the biggest things I took away from it was like, I have the power to create clarity, to reduce and let go of that anxiousness I was feeling. I just deep down in my like truest self wanted the clarity. What that allows you to do is build real self-confidence in your depth. Because basically the part of you that is, and the part of me that was scared to ask for that clarity, that's a part of you that at some point in your life learned that standing up, speaking up, asking questions is not a good thing. So when you allow yourself to ask to gain clarity, right? To come from curiosity instead of allowing assumption, you get to stand up for that version of yourself. You get to be for yourself what that version of you needed and had every right to do. Anybody who is healthy, anybody who genuinely wants a mature, healthy relationship will have no issue of creating clarity, especially if the lack of clarity creates issues for the relationship or issues for yourself. Basically, you're going to be building confidence in yourself. You're going to be creating clarity, and that's going to be empowering. And ultimately, you're standing up for the version of yourself that believes you can't or shouldn't ask in the first place. And it's healthy to do so. And anybody that is healthy will be more than okay with it, if anything, appreciate it that you're asking for clarity. Now look, I get I'm just telling you to go and do something that's potentially scary, right? Go and tell the person you really like that you're curious about why they're not texting as much. It's normal to have fears. It's normal to have worries about that. It's something you potentially haven't done before. So let me just speak to some of those fears directly. The one that kind of comes first to my mind is, well, you know, Aaron, what if I go and talk to them and it just confirms my fear? They really don't like me, and that's why they just haven't been texting for like 6 to 8 hours. You know, valid fear. That would suck. That would be shitty. But I want you to kind of play that out. Let's say you didn't tell them for the next like month to 6 months even. You're there chasing this person who doesn't like you or isn't that interested in you, hence them trying to like ghost you. So let's say you do that. Let's say you go and try and chase this person, and even though nothing's happening, you're building this internal idea of we're going to be together and we're going to be something. And now 5 to 6 months in, they finally had enough, and you've kind of like pushed them into this corner where they have to be like, hey, listen, you know what? I'm actually just not interested. Or they just cut you off completely. What's going to be worse? Building this entire fake reality, getting closer to somebody in your head that isn't interested in you, or getting that clarity before? it's an obvious one in that sense. So in terms of that fear, it's way better for you to find out now, even if it's the bad or negative outcome. You save yourself hurt, you save them potential hurt or discomfort, and you get clarity to move forward. Even if it turns out quote unquote negatively, as in they say, yeah, I'm actually just not interested in you, you still feel more confident in yourself. They still feel good about themselves even when the outcome has been negative, because they've created clarity. They've stood up for themselves, and therefore they're not stuck in that limbo of not knowing an assumption anymore. So it's a really important one to remember. Okay, another one that comes to mind is, what if I seem too needy or clingy because I'm asking? Now, I want to be very honest about this one. There is potential to sound clingy or needy when creating clarity for yourself. But, and this is an important skill to learn, that is if you're doing it from the fear. If you're speaking directly from the fear, it's going to come out needy and clingy, because you're going to be like, oh, do you not like me? Do you don't want to talk to me anymore? Blah, blah. You're assuming, you're putting your assumption into your communication. So the most important skill, which is something I spoke about earlier, is healthy communication. When you learn how to communicate healthily, which is very simple and easy actually, you won't sound clingy or needy. And therefore you can say things that talk about fears and insecurities and everything, but it sounds very confident. It sounds very stable. And again, if somebody is sitting there being like, you're too needy or clingy for asking for clarity because there isn't clarity, that's just someone who doesn't want a real, healthy, mature relationship. But it's not going to be fun or enjoyable for you, truly. But if you have any more sort of fears, you're welcome to put them in the comments and I'll reply to them. But also what I wanted to mention is, if you're struggling with this idea of healthy communication, I actually created a framework because of how many times I've had to go through a trial and error learning this, how to communicate healthily. So I've created a pretty easy plug and play framework, and I'll put it into the description of the video. It's free, and that'll help you a lot. If you literally just use that framework and insert them there, that's awesome. And look, I just want to be straight up with you. I know it can be scary. I've been there. It's not easy, but I promise you, on the other side of that scary step forward is a truer, more confident, more real version of yourself. When you do the scary thing and you can feel deep down inside that that is the right path, that is the healthy path, that part wants to be seen and wants to be believed. You take a step into the unknown, you do something you haven't necessarily done before, but you can feel is right, good, new, but in a good way. So if you're feeling like a little bit nervous, but there's also a part of you that's a bit excited, like this is a path, this is a way forward that feels right, that feels true, that feels good, then I wanna invite you to take that as the sign. And as I said before, even if the worst case happens where it does push them away, that means you being your true, healthy, good self has filtered out someone that's not actually good for you. So yeah, I get it, and I'm with you, and have courage in yourself. Be brave, because I promise you on the other side is good in whatever form. And most importantly, just, you're not alone. I'll be here, and you're welcome to stay. It'll be really cool to chat to you again. Okay, see you.